Welcome to the Magnificast, a podcast about Christianity and leftist politics. I'm your co-host, Dean Detloff.
And I'm your other co-host, Matt Bernico.
Matt, I'm going to need you to put your cell phone and any other means of communication you might have, your laptop, your Apple Watch, your walkie-talkie, your cup and string. I'm going to need you to put it all in this bin. And I'm going to put that in the safe, and I'll give it back to you as soon as we come out of this podcast, having chosen the next pope.
Okay. We're gonna go into our own conclave here.
That's right. 2 cardinals enter, 1 pope gets talked about.
Have I become a cardinal all of a sudden?
That's right. Yep.
Nice.
In the Magnificast universe, you're the cardinal of the Bone Church specifically, and I can be your assistant cardinal.
Wow.
Youth cardinal.
An incredible upgrade in these last few minutes. Hey, I should tell you, I've been playing a little bit of Skyrim over the last few days. Can I bring the PS5 inside of the conclave? Is there any rule against that?
That's a really good question, and I'm actually not sure. Probably I'll have to go ask another cardinal. I mean, the Pope is dead, so there's kind of nobody really in charge exactly. I mean, yeah. I'd say you can bring it in, but you do have to play Skyrim in kind of a tactful, respectful way in a corner.
Of course. Hang on. I have to make a new character. Crunk Stinkley isn't going to hang in this conclave. I don't think that can be allowed.
That's right, folks. We can't stop talking about the conclave. Did we talk about it last week? Yes. Are we talking about it again? Yes. And guess what? I'm traveling next week, so I don't know. You're just going to have to live with it. This is a podcast about conclaves now. And I suggested to Matt that conclave content, it might seem like too much. It might seem like we're doing it too long, but I'm actually not capable of thinking about literally anything else until we have a new pope. So I just think we have to do it. We're stuck with it. And you're going to have to listen to it. And if you tell anybody else about this podcast without making them listen to it directly, you'll be excommunicated, just like the staff at the Vatican who can't talk about the conclave ever.
Oh, no. Will they be excommunicated if they did?
Yeah, they took an oath.
Oh,
I think they just either took it today or tomorrow. So,
wow.
It's happening.
You know, that's harsh but fair, I'd say. You have to go to actual hell if you do break the big cone of silence. All right, I guess that's fine.
You know what's very funny about it? Okay, so it's true. They take oaths. You're not supposed to talk and whatever. But people do, as you can guess. And I was reading an article this week. I should have found it before today, but it was talking about this particular oath and kind of what it does and doesn't mean and how we have information about what happens. And they made the point that Pope Francis had talked about the conclave that he was elected in a few times, which is extremely funny and just like very, very cool. I'm the Pope energy to be like, I'm just going to talk about it. I'm sure it'll be fine.
That's cool of him. I mean, I guess he's immune from the oath.
You'd hope. We'll find out. We'll all find out one day.
One day. When we all get to heaven, that's the first question I'm asking. Man, that's great. Well, I hope nobody leaks any big secrets too soon, because I like a slow burn. I think that's probably my favorite type of conclave situation. I want it over fast, but I want it to be sort of a slow drip of information. That's my preference.
Yeah, you know, I'm traveling at such a strange time because the conclave, it starts on Wednesday, Rome time. So that's like morning for me. I guess basically the same for you, an hour ahead of you.
Right.
And so when, they'll start when I'm asleep. That's great. There could be a pope as soon as I wake up. That would be crazy on Wednesday. They then have a few days to do some more voting. They can vote, I think, actually 4 times a day. I thought it was twice. It's actually 4. And if they vote for a pope by the weekend, that'll be great. But if they don't vote for a pope by the time I get on the plane on Sunday, I will lose my mind. If I'm in the air and I don't have access to my phone, I can't know who the pope is. I don't know. It's going to be bad. It will just heighten all the flight anxiety because there's not even a pope in the world. I need that just for my own safety.
What are the chances then in that situation that you will buy the in-flight Wi-Fi?
Whoa, extremely high, very high, probably 100.
That's great. Well, yeah, man, I'll do my best over on this side of the world. I'll text you, I'll tweet you, I'll woof you, and I'll let you know if I get the information before you. Absolutely.
Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about it. There have been headlines and things to share, believe it or not, since the last week. And man, the conclave. So my wife, she lives for Catholic gossip, and she was just asking me, "What's the gossip? Is it coming out?" And I'll give the Cardinals some credit. For a while, there was very little gossip. People were being pretty normal and chill, and whenever they talked to the press, they would say normal stuff and be pretty diplomatic. But I gotta tell you, it's starting to get a little spicy, and it's
All
not
right.
too spicy, but the spice, it's starting to happen. And we'll get to the spicy nature of some of the things happening on the margins, but I do think first we should probably get the big ticket item out of the way, which is that Donald Trump did post an AI picture of himself as the Pope on the internet. And
That's right.
I want to hear what you think about that, Matt.
I don't think it's great. I mean, I'm not Catholic, as everyone knows, but I don't think it's great. I don't think you should be doing that. I mean, Donald Trump is also not Catholic, so that it feels like an extra type of like strangeness. Like, I don't know. What if the Dalai Lama died and he posted an AI picture of himself as the Dalai Lama? That's a weird one as well. I don't know. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's a very strange thing to do. But I don't know. I get it. Donald Trump, he likes having fun out there on the internet, so I guess that's the whole reason behind it. Is it bad to do this, Dean? I don't know. It seems bad to do this, morally
It does
speaking.
seem bad to do it. I think so. You're just to clarify, you're telling me you wouldn't do something like this. I'm not going to see the Matt Bernico AI Pope photo circling around the internet anytime soon.
Big time. No, I would not do this. No,
Great.
no, never. For so
That's
many
good
reasons.
to know.
Yeah.
We can keep doing this podcast then. Yeah, so it's bad, and man, people are trying to say that it's bad in some very funny ways. There's like a group of bishops in New York and kind of Catholics more generally, and they released a statement saying it was disrespectful and not cool. Conservative Catholics are even saying it's not great. There was a very funny response from Cardinal Timothy Dolan, who is a cardinal in New York and quite a conservative guy. And he is in Rome, and he was asked about it in I guess it was like a press conference or something. Anyway, he said it was not a good thing. So that's the first comment. You can make sure
I agree.
that
Wow.
that profundity. This article published in National Catholic Reporter goes on to say, asked about Trump's odd endorsement of his candidacy, because Trump said that Dolan should be the Pope. Dolan reacted with a frown and a hand gesture to dismiss the subject. Very funny. And when asked if it would be appropriate for the president to apologize for the fake image, Dolan said, "Who knows?" So really strong opinions coming from Cardinal Dolan. I do think it's very funny that Trump might be doing to the conclave what he did to the election in Canada and more recently in Australia, just really kind of poisoning a few candidates, but we'll see.
Yeah, really putting his thumb on the scales there. That's so funny. Yeah, there's another article about this. I mean, there's so many articles about this in particular, but there's another one that I read in Crux that said, in many ways, the picture doubled down on a previous statement Trump had made to reporters last week, where he said, "I'd like to be Pope," the president said. "That would be my number one choice." Trump was joking at the time, and later said that he had no preference in the election, before pointing at the cardinal in New York, Timothy Dolan, who he says happens to be very good, Trump said. So it's so stupid. But I don't know. It's great. It's great to introduce a little bit of like sort of circus vibe into the conclave. You know, there's like the gossip, and that's fun. And there's like kind of some serious stuff, but it is great that there's a little bit of funny things happening, even though it's sort of disrespectful. I can appreciate that at least someone's trying to have a good time.
Yeah, that's right. I think the next Pope should make an AI generated image of him in the White House being like, "How do you like it? I'm the president now."
Now, let's hang on one second here. So, okay, it's bad to make yourself an AI picture as the Pope. I can agree to that.
Yeah.
But for me, most of the reason has to do with using just sort of generative AI to make a dumb picture of yourself for Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
And I guess
yes.
it's sort of disrespectful for Donald Trump to be the Pope for a lot of reasons because he's a giant shithead. But, you know, whatever. Like, sometimes people will do a thing where they'll be the Pope for Halloween, and to me that seems pretty fine. That seems okay
I've done
generally,
it,
right? Oh, see,
so it must be fine.
how different
Uh,
is that than this?
it's so different in every way. I don't even have to explain it. That's how different it is. But I think
I believe you.
you're right about the generative AI part, and I think instead what the Pope should do is commission someone to make like a Renaissance style painting of him in the White House, and then take a picture of that and put that on the internet.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, there's something even funnier about that though, sort of a Renaissance style painting of an old man, as if he were the president of the United States. Because it would end up being indistinguishable from just like the reality, I'm sure.
That's right. New primary candidate just dropped.
Sort of like Baudrillardian levels of of practical joke, but I can appreciate that. That's great. That's my jam.
So there you have it. I mean, the conclave, it's starting to be a thing. The president's out there, he's tweeting about it. People are talking about it. Lots going on. And the conclave is really here, whether people like it or not. In addition to all the, I don't know, opportunities for joking and everything else, as I mentioned, it is starting to get a little bit spicy. And I thought I'd pull out just a couple of examples of it. We mentioned last week at the time Cardinal Becciu, who is the guy who was involved in this real estate scandal. He was found guilty, but he's appealing it. So I don't know. Let your conscience decide what you think about that. He was a cardinal, so you'd think that he'd be able to vote for the Pope. But between last week and now, after being presented with documents signed by Pope Francis, says National Catholic Reporter, disgraced Cardinal Angelo Becciu announced that he will not be attending the conclave to elect the next pontiff, he said in a statement provided by his lawyer on Tuesday. And so he's not going to do it because somebody found these secret documents, just like in the movie Conclave, saying you're not allowed to be here. So that's one big news piece, and a big disappointment for him. He was insisting that he did have the right to participate in the conclave, and he still insists on his own innocence, to be fair to him. But the Pope said, nope, you can't do it. Can't choose the next Pope. So bummer for him. He can't go.
What a wild thing that Pope Francis had the forethought to write this letter. I mean, I guess just like the news about this guy broke, and he was like, this guy specifically cannot be involved. That's
right.
Wild. That's a wild thing.
It is
I hope
wild.
that when, I don't know, I just never want to be in that situation where someone who is dying writes me off and embarrasses me like that. I mean, I'm glad that will probably never happen to me, but just I wouldn't want it to happen to me. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's right. So there's also, related to this, there are stories kind of going around about it. So the guy who is the Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin, he is papabile. People think he has a shot of being the Pope. Who knows whether he does or not. But there were some rumors about him going around that would have suggested that maybe he wouldn't be a great Pope because of he had like a health scare or something like that. Which is not true. Turns out it's fake. But it was being reported in a few places. And the big question was, who did it? Who could possibly have done it? And there was some speculation that maybe Cardinal Becciu had leaked this story to the press, which turned out to be false. But anyway, so that, I mean, who knows? True or false? Probably shouldn't gossip about the Cardinals if I'm doing it. That's one of the rumors that's going around. So who could say?
Okay, so they think that sorry, so it seems like Cardinal Becciu did not spread this rumor. Is that what you're saying?
Well, people say. The rumor is that he did do it, but there's nothing to prove that he did.
Yeah, great.
The gossip is. Yes.
Fine. Well, I'm not going to believe it either way then, if that's the case. I won't believe the possible false witness. I'll just remain in sort of a state of suspended belief about this until I get to the real bottom of it. So interesting. Yeah. So is this a thing that happens in conclave sometimes, like in real life, not just in the movie as well, like where I don't know, people will be subtly politicking and spreading falsities about their fellow cardinals to sort of get a leg up? Is this real? I don't know. It feels like this is like an episode of Survivor or Big Brother that I'm listening to right now.
It's hard to say. I mean, impossible to say even. I think like for sure politicking happens at the conclave, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. and that is what it is. How it happens, I think, it tends to be a bit more subtle. It seems to me anyway. Like, it's pretty rare that you're going to have a big story of, like in the movie Conclave. Spoilers for Conclave. Pause or I don't know, fast forward or whatever. In the movie Conclave, I guess if you pause it, you'll never hear this. In the movie Conclave, you see the story of a cardinal who's trying to sabotage another cardinal through various means. I'll talk generally, and it's a big scandal, and it like rocks the group and everything. I've like probably that's happened in the many thousand years that the Catholic Church has been around, but I don't think that it's not like the kind of thing that makes a lot of headlines. Who could say?
Okay.
All that to say, I think that the one thing that you can guarantee is there will be tons and tons of rumors exactly like this, where some Italian grandma makes up a reason for some cardinal not liking another cardinal, and they tell their Italian nephew, who happens to be a sports writer, and he tells the Italian guy in the newsroom that that's what he heard, and that gets reported to the press. So for sure, that's going to come out.
Nice. Okay. Great. Thank you, Italian grandmas, for doing your diligence of making this interesting to us. Great. Well, how fascinating. We love some spicy gossip. It does. I like that it's just sort of adjacent to the movie Conclave, because it makes it so much more understandable and more exciting to me that sort of there's like a repetition of real life. So great. Love that. Well, Dean, I pulled an article out that I thought was kind of interesting. That's called "Young Catholics Tell the Cardinals What Kind of Pope They Want." And this is another Crux article. Anyways, I thought this was cool. This is sort of like an open letter from the youths of the church, specifically of the Belgian church and their like youth organization called Camino. It's an interesting explanation of like what this particular like letter is saying and what young people purportedly want from the new pope. And I'll
Sunglasses, pizza, skateboarding.
Yeah, we want a pope that can do a Christ air. We want a pope that can do a pop 360 shove it. We want the pope who's playing Elden Ring. I don't know. In the article, it's kind of going through and listing out some of the things that the youths are asking for. So this is a quote from the letter that's in the article. Hopefully that's not too confusing of a thing to say. So the Catholic youths, they're saying, we acknowledge the shadows, clericalism, abuse of power, complicit silence. To honor the past is also to learn from it and not to remain stuck in it, but to heal. Pope Francis, they said, showed us a new way of being church. He reminded us that synodality is not an event, but it's a way of life, and he taught the church to listen to those on the margins. He opened doors, broke taboos, spoke about abuse, power structures, and nature as our sister. He went to places where other world leaders dared to go. He built a culture of dialogue with society and other religions, with those who think and feel differently. And then finally, the conclusion is, do not merely elect a pope. Choose a pilgrim, a shepherd, a peacemaker. Let your choice be a step towards a church where young people are not just welcome, but empowered as co-owners. Let your choice echo the spirit of Francis and offer a prophetic answer to the future. This is all really interesting and kind of neat. I think what's really interesting about this is that like there's a lot of praise for Pope Francis, which is like to be expected at some level because he just died. But the praise seems pretty heartfelt and like they mean it. They're not just saying it because he died, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And
Right.
It seems like what they're asking for is someone who is very similar to Pope Francis. So I don't know, kind of an interesting thing. Dean, what's your read on the youths of Catholicism about what they're after?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that kind of thing is getting reported actually, because in the Catholic Church, especially the closer you are to it, like if you need something out of the bishops, for example, the harder it is to be honest or open or critical, and it shouldn't be that way, but that is the way that it is. And I think it's good that young people who are intentionally trying to be Catholic are, willing to go to bat and kind of say something clearly and strongly and so on. I think it's helpful that that's getting out in the media. Interesting that they are from Belgium, because Pope Francis visited Belgium just last year in the fall, and it was a complex visit for a number of reasons, and the church has been dealing with abuse there in particular and lots of other things. So interesting that they also praised Pope Francis after that challenging visit. I think that there is a lot to say probably about how people are only now really realizing what we had in Pope Francis. I mean, he was Pope for, a little over a decade. And I think that he's always been the cool Pope, but he's made a lot of mistakes. And, the longer somebody's around, also, the more I think you just kind of get used to them as, like, I don't know, a person in the world, a Pope. And I think maybe people are starting to recognize that, like, man, you could either have somebody who's going to keep leaning into the good things that he was opening up, or you could have somebody who really doesn't want to do that at all. So it's good that people are making it clear, that they see a kind of opportunity of continuity there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Um, okay, this is sort of an aside, but I'm feeling led by the Spirit that I make sure this point is heard. The article from Crux also says that the letter has drawn support of famed Spanish TikTok nun, Sister Ziskia Valderas, and also Portuguese DJ priest Father Guilherme Pejito. And listen, like we were making jokes about the skateboard pope, but TikTok nun and DJ priest is like kind of like a step further. Like that is something that I probably would have made up, but it's real. Those are the people that are out there, and isn't that interesting? Yeah, man, I don't know. The whole thing is pretty rad. I hope that the Cardinals listen to the young people. I think like that's probably the last thing you want to do is alienate the people who are going to be the future of your church. That'd be a bad idea. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, it would be a bad idea, but boy, it wouldn't stop us, historically speaking. Yeah, I mean, to maybe pull the pendulum back in that conversation in that direction, unfortunately, it's worth pointing out that there have been concerns around what the conclave, I guess, is and isn't taking seriously. I mean, one thing you can say about this conclave is there's a ton of deliberation. In fact, there have been some reports about how the organizers of the conclave have had to really go out of their way to make sure that there's enough space for cardinals who want to speak ahead of the sequestration period to have that time to speak. And that, gives the impression that people have a lot of things to say, which is interesting. That could be good or bad. Who knows? I was reading another article today that was saying that Pope Francis, before he was the Pope, when he was just Jorge Bergoglio, he gave a big speech in one of these kind of settings, and that was the thing that sort of like set his path to becoming the Pope. It was like a very timely, moving, inspirational speech. So I don't know. Seems like the ball is in the air and up for grabs, and people are trying to figure out whether or not they'll be in continuity with Pope Francis and how. But in the midst of all that, there have also been lots of serious concerns around the structure of the conclave and who gets to participate. So I mentioned Cardinal Becciu, he's out. Pope Francis said you can't come. But there's been another cardinal in particular from Peru named Juan Luis Cipriani Thorn, who is in Rome. And he is not old enough to vote in the conclave, but he has been participating in it. And he was accused of being an abuser. And in fact, Pope Francis had sanctioned him in 2019 after an accusation of sexual abuse, which the cardinal denies, but obviously the Pope took seriously at the time. And in an article from the New York Times, there's a statement here from someone named Anne Barrett Doyle, the co-director of bishopaccountability.org, an archive and advocacy group, who said the church's reassurances that it's paying attention to the issue had been seriously undermined by the presence at the cardinals' meeting of that particular cardinal. It sent a terrible message, said Ms. Barrett Doyle. The Vatican has declined to respond to questions about whether the cardinal should have been present at the meeting. At 81, he's not eligible to vote in the conclave. But this person, Barrett Doyle, goes on to say, is abuse taken seriously? I just can't tell. I don't know if it's still just pretend for them, PR, or if they feel really shook up by it. And I think those are important questions. SNAP, which is a survivors network for people abused by priests, they have also been making lots of comments about how cardinals who have been, complicit in the abuses in the church are still allowed to elect the next pope. In theory, would be allowed to become the next pope. And that's very bad as well. So, there's kind of a lot of important structural questions that are raised during a conclave. So not only are there issues of how do the cardinals feel and so on, and what are they looking for in the next pope. But I think there's also lots of important questions around like who gets to sort of slide by and participate with full rights to, like these are in some cases people whose discernment or judgment didn't prevent them from enabling or committing abuse, and yet they're allowed to discern and judge who the next pope ought to be. So it doesn't build a lot of confidence on those kinds of issues in particular.
Yeah, big time. That is a very serious situation. Huh.
I mean, I think what will be important about all that too, though, is the next pope is going to be saddled with the problem of systemic abuse in the same way that Francis was, and Benedict was, and John Paul II was. And I do think it's interesting, like, people are, going over Francis's legacy on all kinds of issues, including this one. And on abuse, his record is very mixed. Like, there's certain cases where, for example, like in Chile, he demanded the submission of resignation, or at least all the bishops of Chile submitted their resignation to the Pope in light of systemic abuses that were revealed in the Chilean church. And he was pretty disciplinary in the Chilean case and, talked to them pretty directly and firmly about all that kind of stuff. And then there's lots of other cases where people have pointed out that he let things slide or, wasn't very vigilant on this or that piece. And I think that you could say, well, the Pope has lots of priorities and, the church is global and there's lots of people involved. But the fact is it's still the primary blemish on the church's moral authority. And, it's not a secret, and it's also not something that that a pope could simply ignore. And I don't think Francis did just simply ignore it, but he certainly didn't deliver the kind of structural change. Even something as simple as this, like you'd think that it should be disqualifying to choose the next pope for somebody to have come out as to come out, or to have it come out that somebody has been involved or complicit in that structure, but it's not. So anyway, the next pope is going to have to deal with that same problem or not, but it will hang on the church.
Yeah, big time. If Cardinal Becciu is like important enough to write sort of like a letter from beyond the grave about, then probably some of these other guys are too, you'd think.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty rough.
It is rough indeed. Not to move on too quickly or to give that particular topic the right amount of air to breathe or whatever. But let's talk about one other thing before we, I don't know, wrap up the podcast. This will probably take us a minute to talk about, so it'll be maybe more expansive than some of these other topics. But there's a really interesting article from Crux, again, a lot of Crux articles in this one, called Liberation Theology Old Timers, Mourn Francis and Reflect on New Pope. Okay, so this is an article where they interview Boff, Fribetto, Young Mo Sung, and a few other people too, but those three were the most interesting. And we're going to talk about what they have to say in just a minute. Each one of them kind of makes their own called shot about what's going to happen in this conclave, and also gives some kind of reflection on Pope Francis, and that's always really interesting from some of our faves. But Liberation Theology Old Timers is such a funny headline. And
pretty
it's
brutal.
like, it's brutal. It's like, it's not wrong, but it should not be okay to say that. It's just like, they're these old guys, they're too cool, but I guess they are old timers. I don't know. It feels wrong. It feels disrespectful of my favorite old guys.
I agree. And also, they're old timers, but they're like younger in spirit than most of us. I think that's worth saying.
That's right. Yeah, these young at heart liberation theologians. I don't know. That feels wrong too. I guess it makes kind of sense. It makes some sense because there was a whole sort of different global order when these dudes were writing their big books. So maybe that makes a little bit. Maybe they are old timers. I don't know. Hard to say. Okay. So let's see. The first one in the article that's cited is Leonardo Boff. We talk about him a lot on this podcast because he's alive and he's very cool and he has a blog, so he's always kind of saying something. And listen, Pope Francis is no different. He's also saying things about him. Leonardo Boff on Pope Francis says, Pope Francis has always seen himself inside liberation theology in its Argentinian branch. He took to the Vatican the preferential option for the poor, the theme of liberation, and the criticism of the system that kills and produces double injustice. Social injustice, making the minority of humanity being poor, and ecological injustice, devastating ecosystems. a very cool sort of reflection from Boff. I don't know. Where people are always asking whether or not Pope Francis is or is not a liberation theologian. And Dean, you yourself have asked this question in an article for Sojourners kind of a long time ago now. What do you think about Boff's answer that he's inside of it? He's trapped inside of liberation theology and he can't get out.
That's right, and we're all trapped in here with him. Yeah, I mean, I think that Leonardo Boff, we love him. He's the best. He does have kind of a penchant for hyperbole that I appreciate and I think is fun. I think probably he's putting it maybe a little strongly, or rather, like, if you kept talking about it, he would clarify a bit. I think Pope Francis hasn't always seen himself inside liberation theology per se. But I do think that he's right to say, kind of in the spirit of liberation theology, Pope Francis has always been interested in social justice and kind of questions of liberation. Argentina, the reason that Boff says in its Argentinian branch is that in Argentina, there was kind of a unique situation where they had what's often called a theology of the people, which is like related to liberation theology, but more related to the teachings of the magisterium and Catholic social teaching, and just kind of has its own independent genealogy, I guess you could say. And it's true that Pope Francis has been more connected to that than to liberation theology explicitly. And as I say in the article that I wrote for Sojourners, it's not for lack of opportunity. Pope Francis was becoming a Jesuit of influence at the time when liberation theology was really big, and he chose not to be super into it. At the same time, though, Leonardo Boff, he wrote a really good book that was written early in Francis's papacy, but I think is still worth reading, called Francis of Rome, Francis of Assisi. And in that book, he basically says whether we call Pope Francis a liberation theologian or not doesn't really matter. He clearly shares the dream of liberation, and that's all liberation theology was trying to do in the end. Like, it wasn't trying to create a brand or trying to be like, here's a specific theology that everyone ought to agree with or promote or whatever. It was trying to liberate people. And Boff's estimation was that Francis was doing that. He was contributing to that. So I kind of see it in that spirit. So all that to say, I don't know, you could make like an annoying, pedantic academic argument for why Pope Francis is not a liberation theologian, and I've done it, so it's fine. But I think the important thing is that Boff sees Francis as a fellow traveler, and that seems true to me.
Yeah, that's cool. A good explanation. I think that's helpful. Thank you for not being pedantic. Though this is a podcast, and I guess you have every right to be pedantic if you really wanted to be. It's sort of the whole vibe of the medium. Yeah, cool. Boff does go on to say that he makes his own prediction about who he thinks will be the next pope, or maybe not who he thinks will be the next pope, but who he wants to be the next pope. So if you're playing along at home, get your scorecard out and get ready to write down the name of a priest you probably haven't heard of. I'm sorry, a cardinal that you probably haven't heard of. So Boff says that my candidate, the one who would be in line with Pope Francis, is Cardinal Leonardo Steiner, the Archbishop of Manaus. He's the only Amazonian cardinal who, as I see it, will have a great space in the debates of the cardinal due to ecological erosion and the importance of the Amazon for the planet. So there you go. I've never heard of this person before in my entire life, but if Leonardo Boff is for him, then I guess I'm rooting from the sidelines. I'm writing in my letters. I'm calling all the cardinals I know on the phone and asking them to vote for this one guy. Yeah, have you heard of this particular person before, or is this just like a Leonardo Boff deep cut?
I have heard of him actually, but he's a Brazilian and he's also a Franciscan, so really unsurprising that Leonardo Boff, who's also Brazilian and a Franciscan, would say he's the guy, he's your guy.
Right, yeah. Later in this Crux article, Boff says that he'd be called Francis too. So if you like the first one, the second one's gonna be great. You're gonna love it.
Two Pope, two Francis. He has been identified as on the short list of papabiles by some journalists, and like I said, I think last time, I think these lists are kind of absurd. I don't know, they don't tell you that much. But for example, he shows up on Michael Sean Winter's shortlist, the political reporter and op-ed guy at NCR, National Catholic Reporter. He's been on a few others going around. So Boff isn't just like picking somebody who's completely irrelevant. But anyway, very funny for him to pick another Brazilian Franciscan. Good for him.
Really promoting his guys in the world. That's great. There's also a blurb in here from Fry Beto, which is great. Fry Beto says, you might remember him as the guy who wrote the book with Fidel Castro about religion that we've talked about in this podcast quite a bit. Anyways, Beto says all encyclicals written by him, Pope Francis, and all the messages he sent to popular movements during their meetings are consistent with liberation theology. And then he goes on to say this is very fun, actually. Once in Bolivia, he characterized money as the devil's dung. In the encyclical Laudato Si, he denounced nature's degradation as a result of predatory exploitation. This is all very fun reflections on Pope Francis. The devil's dung thing is always very funny. Money is the devil's dung. This is great because it's not only a Pope Francis thing, but it's also a Saint Francis thing. Saint Francis has said this about money a handful of times, and there's a really weird story about Saint Francis where like somebody had laid money on an altar, and like one of the Franciscan brothers picked it up and like was gonna move it to like a more suitable place or whatever. And Saint Francis was so pissed off that this guy, that his one of his guys that was following him would even touch money, that he made the guy, the brother, put the money in his mouth and carry it outside, and then put it on top of like a dung heap outside, just to prove the point. So that's a wild medieval story that is definitely true. Definitely, it's so true. I'm sure that it's really happening. But anyways, very fun sort of reflections between two Francises.
Between two Francis, exactly. Fray Beto also, I know, has been making the rounds in other publications highlighting Pope Francis's role in Cuba. Not only did Fray Beto do this book with Fidel, but he has a long history in Cuba. Right now, he's, I think, still the UN FAO representative in Cuba. And just a big Cuba solidarity guy. And he's been talking through how Pope Francis really brought the US and Cuba together in a unique way. And I mean, people probably remember the, what do you call it? The thaw, the thaw between the Obama government and Cuba. And Pope Francis was trying to really lean into that and promote peace. The church was a broker of conversation within Cuba. And even just recently, earlier this year, Cuba released a bunch of prisoners in light of the Jubilee year. And Pope Francis, he talked about the blockade when he made his visits to the U.S. He also visited Cuba right before going to the United States, which I think is like a pretty cool statement and a big move. He could have gone anywhere. He could have not gone to Cuba at all, but he decided to do that before visiting the U.S. So I think that's pretty neat. And Fray Beto had mentioned the next pope is going to have to keep building on it. And to be fair, JP2 and Benedict XVI, they also were, they visited Cuba, and that was really significant. So looking forward to a fourth papal visit to Cuba.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great. Fray Beto, his prediction on the next pope, he says, I have a feeling that we will have a new moderate to conservative pope who will not reverse what Francis has achieved. And then he says that I bet the papacy will return to the hands of the Italians. That's his prediction. No names to add to your list, to your fantasy cardinal list. But anyways, it is an interesting insight that, just because you have a moderate or conservative pope, it doesn't necessarily mean that like you'll have lost all that was gained or whatever. So some good insight. I appreciate that.
Right. I mean, in many respects, Pope Francis himself is a conservative of a certain kind or a moderate of a certain kind. So there's definitely room for that kind of thing. One thing that's funny about saying that the papacy should go back to the Italians. So for people who don't know, the Italians were Pope for like 400 years. And then we had John Paul II from Poland and Benedict from Germany and now Francis from Argentina. So the Italians, they're really, itching for it, I'm sure. But the most of the cardinals who are Italian, the Pope Francis promoted, are progressives. So I guess if they want an Italian pope, they'll have to deal with having a more progressive guy, most likely. So that's a very funny, subtle move on Pope Francis's part.
Yeah, great. The Italian trap. It's great. Cool. There's one more person that's listed in this article, maybe a few more, but one more that I think is maybe worth mentioning. Young Mo Sung, who is a South Korean theologian. I don't know a ton about him, but I do know that he's actually not. He's not a priest. He's just like a lay theologian, which is great. Love a lay person out there in the world. Feel a lot of kinship with them. I have no interest whatsoever in being a person in the church, but I do love commenting on church stuff and thinking about it as a person who has no official role. It's always great. It's great to be outside of things, but still have a hot, spicy opinion. Anyways, Young Mo Sung, he says in Evangelii Gaudium, the Pope criticizes capitalism and discusses the idolatry of money, for instance, without identifying the source. He also mentions the divinization of the market. Those ideas come from Brazilian-born theologians Hugo Assmann, a favorite, and also German-born theologian and economist Franz Hinklemart, also a favorite. So anyways, some cool additional reflections that Pope Francis, there's some liberation theology sort of just baked in to some of it. Some of the assumptions that he's making in his encyclicals and elsewhere are, fundamentally from that neck of the woods, which is pretty cool.
It is cool. Interesting guy too, Young Mo Sung. He was born in Korea, but raised essentially in Brazil. And he's Catholic layperson, but he was educated by Methodists. And as a Catholic who was educated by Calvinists, I can really appreciate that. A cool guy all around, Young Mo Sung.
He seems great.
So maybe the last thing to round out here as we get to the end and we're all getting ready for the Cardinals to escape into the Sistine Chapel and never be seen again until we have a Pope. Pope Francis has still been making waves from the grave, and I thought that would be fun to talk through. Not only with Cardinal Becciu, but there have been two headlines in particular that stood out to me. One is so the stereotype is that the Pope is like a super rich guy, but guess what? He's not. However, Pope Francis had 200,000 euros in his personal bank account, and in death he gave it to the prisoners at a prison that he often visited. He made his last visit to the prison as recently as April 17th. And he had a long history of going there. He washed the feet of prisoners. He famously said that the death penalty is not part of Catholic social teaching anymore. And it's not. And that's very cool. Really interesting guy. So anyway, he gave all of his money to the prisoners. And I think that is such a great, gesture where Francis is still being Pope Francis after having died. So that's one. I'll pause there before I tell you the other cool one.
That's great. What a neat thing. Yeah, I saw some of those headlines where, he died and had an empty bank account, which is pretty wild. It is, I'm not going to say that 200,000 euros is not a lot of money because, if suddenly I had that in my bank account, it would make a big difference to me. But for someone who is the Pope, you'd expect you to have more in there, wouldn't you? I don't know. That's my guess, but interesting all the same.
Yeah, the Pope is entitled to like a pretty hefty salary, which honestly, I don't understand at all. Seems suspicious to me. But right. Anyway, the Pope said he didn't want it. So that's cool. Cool. Nevertheless, made enough money. But he did another very cool symbolic thing. This has just been coming out recently. So the Pope Mobile, the car that the Pope drives around in, he has donated it to become a mobile health clinic for children in Gaza. So the Pope Mobile is being retrofitted now. It will be sent to Caritas Jerusalem, which has managed a bunch of humanitarian aid stuff in Gaza. And Anton Asfar, who is the Secretary General of Caritas Jerusalem, says the vehicle represents the love, care, and closeness shown by His Holiness for the most vulnerable, which he's expressed throughout the crisis. And man, I think it's so great that the Pope was like, what are you going to do with my car after I die? Why don't you just send it to Gaza? Is pretty rad. And also just a really cool challenge, I think, to the world to keep on thinking about that even when he's gone.
Yeah, I saw this headline a little bit earlier today, and I saw people kind of doing jokes about it on Blue Sky or whatever, and that's cool. It's a funny thing. It's a funny image. There's a lot of funny things about that, but it is rad as hell if you think about it. Because what better use in the world for a bulletproof mobile vehicle is it to
exactly
to a war zone? That makes complete sense. That's great. I don't know. It's good. The Popemobile in general is just like a weird cultural object that I think is inherently sort of funny because it's called the Popemobile. But yeah, no, it's great. Use it as a mobile hospital. I hope it saves 1,000 little kids' lives, and that's great. All good all around. Love to see it.
Man, I would love to read just like a media history of the Popemobile, like a short, one of those weird like MIT books or whatever, and it's just called the Popemobile.
There's just like countless jokes about it in like adult animation. Like I don't know, there's a Family Guy joke about it. There's a Futurama joke about it. There's a Simpsons joke about it, I'm sure. So I don't know. There's probably a lot of good, interesting ideas in it though.
I think so. So you can look out for that. Once we finish the degrowth book, we'll do the Popemobile book. A cultural history of the Popemobile.
That's right. Man, when I was kind of surprised though because I didn't know. I thought the Pope Mobile was sort of just like the Pope Mobile, and different popes all had the same car for some reason. I don't. Now
Like
that I'm
the
saying
Batmobile.
right now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing how stupid of an idea this is.
The old medieval
There's
Popemobile.
There's got to be more than one of these things, right? Okay, never mind. I take it back. I take it all back. It's fine.
It's still powered by steam and an army of Italian peasants throwing like horse dung into the back of it.
Yeah, that was basically my thought. Yeah.
Man, so yeah, Pope Francis, he's still great. He's still challenging cardinals to do better just by being a person who had creative and wacky ideas. I think it's going to be interesting to see who's next. It's wild to think that we could have a pope by the end of this working week even, which is pretty nuts. I saw a couple articles about how the older cardinals over 80 who can't vote, some of them are already getting on the plane and leaving Rome. Pretty soon the cardinals are going to be sequestered. Depending on when you listen to this, I guess they might already be sequestered. Who knows? They go into sequestration on Wednesday. That's when all the big signal jammers will really be activated. Nothing gets in or out. And they're not allowed to come out till they have a pope. So looking forward to that. Leading up to the conclave, I mentioned that most comments to the press have been pretty diplomatic. A lot of cardinals said that they think it's going to be short. It won't take long. But now that we're getting closer and closer, some cardinals are starting to say it's not exactly clear who's going to be pope. And others are saying that it already seems like it might be clear who's going to be pope. So it really could go either way. I think it's very exciting. It could be short. It could be long. It could be easy. It could be difficult. I can't wait to find out who the one big guy out of all these guys is going to be.
I think that this is the best it can be, right? That there's conflicting takes, there's conflicting thoughts about it. That's going to be the most fun that we don't know. Not knowing is the most fun. That's going to be sort of a weird situation with its ups and downs and all kinds of crazy media stories on the outside. So that's what I want in a conclave. I want entertainment, and it seems like we might get a little bit of it at least.
I think so. You know, Pope Francis, when he became Pope, he immediately did some very funny stuff, right? He like had the white cassock. He refused Benedict's fancy red shoes. He didn't wear those. He kind of already projected this image of simplicity. He chose to live in a smaller apartment and not the big papal palace, all this kind of stuff. And man, imagine having to follow that guy, because like the minute you're like, I'm going to live in the papal palace, you're going to look like a huge asshole. So
I would
looking
like
forward to finding out how figure out how the next pope deals with all that is going to be very funny.
That's true, man. What a precedent though. That is very funny. That's a that's like a great Jerry Seinfeld sort of stand-up bit that you just stumbled upon there.
A real George Costanza kind of moment.
It really is. He's gonna have to write his own his own question into my brother and me, like, hey, I just became pope. How do I follow this guy's example?
I just became pope and I don't want to live in this apartment. I want to live in the papal palace that I'm entitled to. How do I do it in a cool way?
Hi brothers, I have to design a new Pope Mobile for myself because the last one gave the Pope Mobile away. How should I design the Pope Mobile?
The last pope gave his car to people in a war zone. How can I do even better? How can I one up him?
Incredible. Well, we'll find out all of this and more maybe next week. but maybe more than that. Who can say?
Yeah, and like I said, I'm traveling next week, so probably won't have an episode. So I guess we'll allow the new Pope news to simmer, and then we'll be back with some fresh hot takes.
Yeah, that's a good plan. We'll put up an old episode next week, and then we will let stew in a big gumbo, if you will, and then we'll come back with the hottest takes on whoever the new Pope is, good or bad.
Thanks for listening to the Magnificast. If you like what you heard, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/themagnificast. If you do that, you can get into the Discord. And people are talking about all kinds of stuff. I'm scrolling through it right now. There's some Pope news we didn't cover in here on the kerning on the papal tomb. The typography is very bad. That's really funny. So you can read about that in there. People are going through Karl Marx's Capital still. More power to them. There's some great photos of a snake in here posted while we were recording. So just kind of something for everybody, I'd say. Our music is by Mario Armstrong. The outro is by the Illogical Spoon, and we'll see you next week.
I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord. Jackson, you keep your hoods up. You keep your hoods up and you stay up late. Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. Oh, don't mind a cold night, but we might mind if you leave too soon. So come on now, it's still early. Beside what else are you gonna do? As we kissed in the alley by the Michigan Theater, fall snow was glowing in the lights of the downtown. Saw a spark in your eyes, I just spoke it. Said we're gonna turn this whole place upside down. Then you said, my dear, do you really mean this? I said, I only know what I feel right now. I said, poets lie, sometime come true. Stay away from me, where see what we can do. Poets lie, sometime come true. Stay away from me, where see what we can do in my town. I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord. Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. This the kind of town folks get stuck in. Yeah, people get stuck here, but I chose to stay. If you ever want to know something or know someplace, you just can't know them all. At some point, you must make a choice and choose someplace and make a home. There was a time not long ago when we'd look out this window and see a wolf pack running free. Except there'd be no window or this building separating us from all the life we see. Behold, the Lord makes all things new, and that sounds good, I want to do it too. Oh dear God, destroy my city, make it a place that wolves think pretty. So when I come back here and stay, I want to hear them house down in the grave in my place. I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord.
I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord. I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside.
Well,
There we'll swim with all
yeah, you
creation.
keep your hoods
Never get
up.
tired, never
But
bored.
keep your
Don't
hoods
worry, someday
up.
there'll be
Then you
no
stay up
dam
late.
between us and our Lord.
We're all a bunch of hoodlums. See, the skies are always gray, just like the ground of post-industry ruins we grew up around. Hope to my neighbors, family and old friends. Hope to all desperate and beat down. And beat down, we're all beat down. Groans of the dying are trying to rise from the sprawl. Souls of wounded sing hoarsely if they can at all. We all love leaves, colors, sweet ciders of the fall, till it turns to technique, perfecting winter on. Whole earth now is all one big subdivision. Icy cold, though I'm told can be melted by God. We drove looking, but slept and went into a ditch. Walked by and God's house, couldn't tell which was which. Oh, if only I knew where God's house was mine, I would lie on the couch and then speak on my mind. What do we do? Just watch as this whole world gets worse. Now we're told, blessed are those souls who for justice thirst, but that you'll quench this, they all told me, be sure you're the one to start the fire, for your fire so pure. I don't want to go out like no prophet so bad. Seatbelt never showed up, though they danced in the yell. Yeah, I know I'm afraid of what my words imply. Deep down I'm not ready to face up to your fire. Okay, oh mystery, mercy me, may it be. Okay, oh mystery, mercy me, may it be. Okay, oh mystery, mercy me, may it be. Holy thee, we all need you, you know us, I hope. That's a grove of oak leaves where faith's fire could glow. But it's so hard out here in the cold, when it seems all we do is just wait and get old. It's so hard out here in the cold, when it seems all we do is just wait